Let us help you reach your peak in retirement. It's time for Your Retirement Elevated.
It's another episode of Your Retirement Elevated with Scott Dugan, financial advisor and lead planner at Elevated Retirement Group, serving you all across the country, based in Kansas City. And hey, we are post-Thanksgiving, but we are pre-end of the year, Scott. So we're down to less than a month at this point of planning left in the year for 2024. And so that's why we wanted to take the time today to make sure that we covered some of the most costly mistakes that people make when it comes to their year-end planning. We're going to give you kind of four main reasons and four main mistakes to focus on today. Before we dive into all that, Scott, I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving.
It was fantastic. Had a great time and ate a little too much, but feeling pretty good.
But you remembered your stretchy pants, so you were good, right?
That's right. That's right.
If folks saw our previous episode, it was all about tips to make your Thanksgiving a good one, and stretchy pants was part of it. So I had to make sure Scott brought those along. That's great.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in here. Year end obviously is an excellent time for pretty much anybody to think about addressing issues in their portfolio. Often we'll hear about rebalancing things this time of year, especially if we've had a lot of movement in the markets due to the election this year. There was lots of up and down and uncertainty that led to kind of some volatility there. And so financial advisors all across the country start to talk about these kinds of things near the end of the year. But we want to broaden it out beyond just that, hey, rebalance your portfolio conversation, and look at some of the other year-end planning mistakes that could cost you down the line, or even in the short term as well. So first one on our list here, Scott, to tackle is a good one, because this one really makes things not quite as they seem. And that's addressing debt to make sure that you're optimizing your retirement peace of mind. And this is something where you can have people with vastly different situations, and one looks like they're in a lot better spot, but that isn't necessarily reality. And it's because of that debt.
Absolutely. And, personal debt is on the rise, coming out of the pandemic, and personal savings rates are decreasing, and personal debt is increasing, especially on credit cards.
We're going in the wrong directions.
Definitely. And if you think about, you've got your assets and liabilities, and that's why, part of our evaluation process is saying you get a good picture of where you are. And I learned this from a good friend of mine. He's in Des Moines, Iowa. He's an advisor. When he teaches classes, and when he comes in, he goes, think about this. When everybody used to go to the mall, and I know probably people haven't been to a mall in a long time, but if you're in a new city, a new mall back in the day, what is the first thing you would do? You'd look around, you'd come in, and you'd find that kiosk.
Food court.
You'd find them at the food court. You'd find the map.
Oh, the map.
And say,
okay. Then find.
And what did you always do? What did you want to try to do first? You wanted to do here's where you are.
Yes.
Okay, so you got to find out, where are you? And the evaluation process, what are your assets? What are your liabilities? What's your debt? What is your income streams for down the road? And so we've got to really get a good handle on that. And the reason why, going into retirement, with a lot of debt, it could give you this mirage of, oh, we're doing well. So an example, you got somebody that has, $2.5 million saved for retirement, and they think, hey, we got 2 Social Security checks and $2.5 million bucks. But what if they have a big mortgage? What if they've got they bought a brand new car and financed it and got a big credit card? Well, those payments are merely promises of your future income. You've committed future cash flow to service those things. So you think about, someone goes into, hey, we're going to retire. We'll pull money out of our retirement savings. Well, what happens when we have a market pullback and you see the value of that shrink and you're still having to pay those debts? What if we have inflation, that makes our purchasing power lower? Oh, and the bad thing, if we're having a consumer credit card, or right now car notes, car loans are that 6 to 8%, depending on credit limits or credit scores. The interest that is accruing on some of this debt may outpace the average growth rates of your portfolio. So all those things could really have a detrimental effect. So if you compare that to somebody that's got, let's say, $600,000 coming into retirement, 2 Social Security checks, maybe 1 pension, and no debt. Well, on paper, I'd rather have $2.5 million. Well, you don't retire on assets, you retire on income. And it could be that person with $600,000, 2 Social Security checks and a pension, no debt. They could be a lot more financially solvent than the person with $2.5 million and a ton of debt. So always make sure you keep a handle on your debt. Make sure if it's good debt, bad debt, and what's the plan to get rid of that as fast as possible in the context of an overall plan.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, so the mistake there really is focusing way too much on that total number of savings and ignoring all the other components that go into that plan, because it can tell a completely different story when you bring the rest of those things into the equation. So
absolutely.
A great illustration of those two different examples there, Scott. Another key mistake and issue that we should focus on here at the end of the year so that you don't make a costly mistake would be considering the costs associated with early retirement. This is often referred to, Scott, as the go-go years of retirement. You've still got your health, hopefully, and you've just retired, and you've got all that vim and vigor and energy and excitement to go out and explore the world and be active. But it's often overlooked how much cost comes along with being that active.
It definitely does. Or I think a lot of if you're watching this on YouTube, for example, you're going to get fed a bunch of other YouTube channels after this. And there's going to be wildly differing opinions on, what's right, what's wrong. But after almost, 2.5 decades of helping people plan for retirement to get to and through retirement, I can tell you that for most people, it's not you start at a certain income level and it just steadily increases over time for the rest of your life. That's what a lot of the calculators online do. And I think it leads to people making decisions without all the information that in front of them. In my experience, and I've written in my book, in Kiplinger articles about the go-go, slow-go, and no-go phases of life. But that go-go is usually the first 10 years of retirement. When you, like you said, Walter, your health is great. You've got enthusiasm, excitement, energy. You're going to clip off, hopefully, a lot of the things you want to do. And it may not be trips around the world, things like that, but it could be, hey, we're going to give. We're going to travel the United States. Maybe it's going to be a, vacation home, something like that. So really your first decade or so is usually going to be your highest expenditure out of the gate. And then as we see after the first 10 plus years, then we start to gradually decline. And let's say that's, early to mid 70s to 80. And then the no-go is usually our 80, 85 plus, where we're just not spending, we're not buying as many cars. We're not doing a lot of things.
Yeah, you're putting less miles on things, and so you're just not having to replace it as frequently.
Yeah, and a perfect example. I've got a client. One of my longest relationships as a client. They are both 88. Will be 89 in 2025. Last time we came in, 2 things really stood out. 3 things I should say. They look like they haven't aged. So I don't know if they're sleeping in hyperbaric chambers. That's number 1. Number 2, I said, hey, what's been going on? Oh, they just got back from a road trip to California.
Wow.
So drove to California, right? And to see I think it was someone's brother who's also in her 80s, drove back, having a great life. And they just sold a lake home that they've had for years, and said, hey, let's come in and talk about it. I said, well, do you need any more income? And they said, you know what? We can't spend the income that we're getting now through pensions, Social Security, dividends, interest. And they said, it's just piling up. And because even though they're still doing things, they're not spending like they did in their first decade or so of retirement. So don't underestimate the consumption or the burn rate of your resources in the go-go years.
Yeah. And they're living proof that their go-go years even have perhaps extended. And with us getting healthier and better in shape, we might see over the next decade or 2, the go-go years last 10, 20 years instead of just the 5 to 10 years or, kind of whatever those brackets look like. So
absolutely.
That's just going to increase. That problem's not going away, in other words. That's going to be
no, it's not. It's not.
Is your retirement journey truly tailored to your needs? In his book, Exceptional Retirement, Tools and Strategies for Retiring on Your Own Terms, Scott Dugan addresses the crucial crucial questions all retirees ask. Discover the power of a clear financial decision-making process that can prevent major retirement mistakes and unlock exceptional opportunities. In the book, Scott outlines 4 essential questions that guide retirees toward successful outcomes. Don't miss out on key insights that could define your future. Available now on Amazon. Click the link in the description of this episode to get your copy of Exceptional Retirement.
All right, the next one, costly year-end mistakes that we're talking about here on the show. By the way, if you want to go through a complimentary financial review, get more information about Scott and the team at Elevated Retirement Group, pick their brain on living a successful retirement, find out where you are now, like in the mall, looking at that map, finding out where you are now and where you need to go into the future and how to get there most efficiently and successfully, don't hesitate to reach out to Scott. We've got the phone number displayed on the screen, as well as the website, listentoscott.com. If you're listening to the audio version of the show, you can find contact info in the description. Set up your time to meet for a complimentary financial review with Scott, and he'll walk you through all of these major things that you need to consider. Yes, definitely the things we're talking about on today's episode, but so much more involved in the planning process as well. This next one, I don't think will be news to anybody, Scott, but we're talking about making sure that we're not ignoring inflation. It's a mistake that people make all the time when they DIY their retirement and their financial plans. Hopefully, the events of the last couple of years have woken folks up a little bit more, but we had to include this on the list too.
We did, and I think one of the reasons we put it in here is that, coming off of this year's election, the presidential election, you've heard me say before, part of the country is going to be overly pessimistic about the future.
Yeah.
And part of the country is going to be overly optimistic about the future. And every 4 years, we get candidates that trot out and make a lot of promises. That they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to fix this, fix that. Well, there's a lot of talk about, hey, we're going to keep inflation low. Now, we'll see. There could be some headwinds there, with taxes, tariffs, things like that. We don't really know what is going to transpire. So again, I wouldn't be overly optimistic. I wouldn't be overly pessimistic. I would say make sure your plan is flexible enough and works no matter what the outcome is. But that's part of our process, is looking at, hey, if we do have prolonged inflation, periods of inflation, what does that do to your portfolio? And are there things we can do to help insulate you from those effects? And that is not only our asset allocation, it's also our tax planning, because those two things are the things you have control over and makes you be able to stretch your dollars further. And again, those are things that are at your disposal and part of our planning process.
All good points on that one. And we've done episodes all about inflation and covered those things prior. So check out previous episodes and YouTube videos on inflation if you want a little bit more detailed information in that side of things. Last but not least, our final costly year-end mistake to be aware of here, Scott, would be lifestyle changes that lead you down perhaps a bad path. And so we want to make sure we're encouraging folks here at the end of the year to avoid that and make some lifestyle changes that take you in a positive direction. And some of this could be financially related, but some of it's more just, regular life stuff, right?
Absolutely. And, if we're very fortunate, we're putting this out there for the general public.
Yeah.
I very, very few clients that are attracted to our firm have an income or a spending problem. They don't live above their means. That's just not the type of folks that seem to gravitate towards us, and it's not the type of firm that we've built. Financial planning firm that we've built. But if you do find yourself when you're saying, "Hey, where am I? Here's where we are," and the reality of it sets in. If there are things that you do not like, whether it's your spending or it's your health or your lifestyle, that may be a time to start implementing new process, procedures, or structure in your life to get you the desired outcome. And I think you and I are two really good examples from a health perspective. You and I made changes to our lifestyles that led to better outcomes in our health.
Yep.
And I would venture to guess, and I want to put words in your mouth, but I would imagine for many, many years, or I'll speak for myself, I knew what to do. I had an idea of what I wanted. I had goals, but I had a disconnect. I have these desires, but I can't get there. So it was never about the goals. It was about my habits, and my process was flawed. And so working with a behavioral nutritional coach a few years ago, he had a great example. He said, well, if your goal is to have an apple a day for the next week, starting on Monday, he goes, on Sunday, you better buy 7 apples.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, you've got to set intention. If you are concerned that your spending is out of control, or have a loved one you're spending out of control, you got to stop it. You got to stop digging the hole.
Yep.
Just like if you have a lifestyle, we probably need to get new habits in our life to replace the bad habits to lead us down the path that we want to go.
I was going to say it kind of works both ways. If your goal is to not eat ice cream after every dinner, then don't put ice cream in the freezer.
Yep, exactly. And if you want to control your spending, the first step is to understand, where is your money going? Where are you spending? You've got to audit your cash flow, your cash out, and see, where am I? Where are we? How much do we have coming in? What do we have coming out? Is there a gap? And can we shrink that gap? And are things that need to be tweaked? I know we go through a process every year, end of the year. We go back through and try to find any recurring charges we've forgotten about.
Yep.
I'm sure nobody else on watching this has ever paid for something on a monthly basis and never used it and discovered it after a year or so.
Yeah.
And so again, it's just about having awareness. And so a lot of these things, as we're going into it, it's just, we want to make sure that we're not making these mistakes. We're not overlooking these things, because these things can be costly. And as we're going into the year, we all know that a new year brings us new focus, maybe a fresh start, turn the page. I'm talking about it now because it's better to get ahead of this and not wait for this magical January 1st to get a hold of these things. Start talking to your family, your financial professional, your advisor about these issues. See if they apply to you. And if they do, let's put a plan together on how to fix it.
Yeah. And these are just a couple of the things to be thinking about at the end of the year. But there are, Scott has, we talked last episode about checklists and had fun with that. Scott's got a end of year planning checklist that's even way more in depth than what we've talked about on this episode, that's going to look for all of these opportunities to improve your financial situation. So again, if you want to go through that planning process and that review, if you're not a client and you haven't been through that before, reach on out and have that conversation. The first conversation is very approachable, right, Scott? You're just talking about what what somebody wants to get out of retirement, figuring out where they stand right now. There's no commitments right off the bat. It's an easy kind of introductory conversation when somebody first reaches out to you.
It is, and we go through our evaluation process / discovery process, and we focus on the 5 key areas of planning. It's income, investments, tax, healthcare, and legacy, which is your estate plan. And we have everything laid out in a scale of 1 to 10 and how confident you are or concerned you are about your situation. And we don't allow 7s. No 7s allowed. 7 is sitting on the fence. So
if you're under 7, you got something to go do. If you're over 7, then you're feeling good about things.
Yeah, if you're at 8, 9, and 10, you're usually pretty good.
Nice.
If you're 6 or below, there's probably room for improvement. And I would tell you to stay tuned, because there may or may not be an entire episode about that very process that we're going to walk people through.
Perfect. That sounds good. We'll be tuning in for that episode for sure, Scott. But in the meantime, again, if you want to reach out for a review and get that process started with Scott, you can certainly do that anytime. We've got contact information on the screen and in the show notes or the description of today's show. So check that out. ListenToScott.com, your place to go and your hub for past episodes, subscription information, and more. All at ListenToScott.com. Thanks for the help, my friend. And I'll look forward to our final couple episodes of the year before we turn the page to 2025.
Looking forward to it, Walter. Take care.
Scott. For Scott, I'm Walter. We'll see you next time on Your Retirement Elevated.
This video has been prepared for educational and marketing purposes only. The information in this video is general in nature, does not constitute personalized investment advice, and does not provide a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. All investments involve risk, and different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk. There can be no assurance that any specific investment strategy will be profitable or suitable to you. Additionally, although information presented in this video is believed to be factual and up to date, we do not guarantee its accuracy. You should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation and should consult a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies mentioned in this video. Investment advisory services are offered through Elevated Capital Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor affiliated with Elevated Retirement Group LLC. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of Elevated Capital Advisors LLC by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the firm has attained a particular level of skill or ability. Insurance advice and products may be offered by a third-party insurance producer, which may be affiliated with Elevated Retirement Group LLC and Elevated Capital Advisors LLC. Walter Storholt and Third Wheel Media LLC receive compensation for their assistance in preparing and hosting this video.